Welcome back to Disc Golf Over 40. In my last video, I talked about a DIY method for measuring your arm speed. In today's video, I'd like to take that a little bit further and use that knowledge of your arm speed to help predict how far you should be able to throw. And knowing that, help you decide or understand what disc makes sense for you to be throwing. So in today's video, we'll go over how arm speed, max distance, and disc selection all relate to each other and will help you make use of that knowledge to throw farther without guessing. So let's get into it. But first, I just want to remind you, last video, I ended up writing an article after the fact and posted that on my Substack site. So that article I wrote contains an AI prompt that you can copy and paste into ChatGPT or whatever AI service, and it will double check that you have your setup done correctly according to how I do it. And it will also ask you questions for what you measured and provide you the resulting range of velocities that make sense given your measurements. So you can skip all the math and it does it for you. It's really simple. So I encourage you to check that out. So we're going to start with the first concept. That is, your arm speed dictates the range of possible distances you should be able to throw. In order to determine that, I downloaded data from the Tech Disc website of over 5,000 throws done by professionals at disc golfing events. So what you're seeing in this plot is on the x-axis, we've got our velocity in miles per hour. Okay. On the y-axis, going up, we have our simulated distance from Tech Disc. And we've got a shaded gray region surrounding a black line. The shaded gray region gives you kind of the envelope of what's possible. So if you see in here, for me, my max distance right now is, I'm going to say around 350, and I rarely throw it that far. But when I get a really good throw, that's about as far as I can expect to be able to throw a disc right now. That's on flat ground. My dad throws around 210 feet, okay? So last time I measured our arm speeds, mine was around 57 and his was around 49. So if you look at my data point there above the black line at about 57 miles per hour, you can see that I'm nearing the top of the envelope of what's possible at that arm speed. For my dad, he's very close to right at the median value for his arm speed, around 210 feet if you throw around 49 miles per hour. So there is potential though for him to throw even farther given that arm speed. And there is some potential for me. There are some other tricks I can play though too to work toward even farther max distance, and we'll get into those. So if you don't know your arm speed and you do know your max distance, if you assume you're throwing in the middle of your range, and let's say you're something like 250, then you can use this plot to assume you're around 52, 53 miles per hour. This is, again, not true, not perfect, but it's going to give you an idea of where you stand. All right. So that covers what I'm calling rule one. Distance comes from arm speed, and we can predict it given this Tech Disc plot. So next, there's this rule of thumb, which I'm calling my second rule, that helps you to understand which speed of disc makes sense for you to be throwing. It's very simple. All you do is take your current max distance, divide it by 35. So for me, my max distance, as you can see in this plot, is 350, like I said. If we divide that by 35, we get 10. For my dad, his max distance is about 210 feet. If we divide that by 35, we get 6. It just so happens that his max distance disc is the Leopard, a 6-speed, pretty neutral disc to understable. For me, my max distance disc that I've gotten that distance with more consistently is the MVP Trail, a 10-speed disc. That pretty well confirms that this rule of thumb makes sense, at least according to me and to my dad. Okay, so that gives you a place to start. Now, I have had a throw go 350 with the River before. The River is a 7-speed. So if I didn't know about this rule of thumb, then I wouldn't know that there was potential for me to do well throwing a higher speed than 7. And so as you can see, this gives you an idea of what is worth trying. If you can get a 7-speed to go 350, you should be able to do well with a 10-speed. And for me, what that turned out to be was the 7-speed was pretty touchy, and it just was inconsistent, while this 10-speed neutral disc is far more consistent. We'll talk a little more about that. Okay. So now let's get into disc strategy. So what I kind of just described to you helps segue into that, because first, I think it's best to begin throwing the disc with a speed that checks out according to the rule of thumb that I just shared. But what about the rest of the disc numbers? It makes the most sense for developing your distance capability to be throwing a more neutral to slightly understable disc. So for me, the Trail, it's 10.5, -1.1. For my dad, the Leopard is 6.5, -2.1. And that's a very good starting point. Let's get into disc strategy number 2. This is a forgiving S-curve disc, okay? This has the potential to unlock greater distance than the very neutral disc I just described to you. But it's a little harder to find this one. So I spent a lot of time on the Tech Disc Simulator website this last 2 weeks as I was trying to see, given an arm speed and disc numbers, what's the farthest it will fly, and adjusting disc numbers to see if it would go farther. The main thing that came out of that was max distance is always achieved by obtaining the greatest full flight you can get, the longest full flight. So you're looking for that complete S-curve. For me, I've been testing out these DX discs lately. One this last week that's been extremely surprising, makes 0 sense to me. The Orc, this thing is 172 grams. It's got flight numbers of 10.4, -1.3. So for me, I would expect this thing to fly like a Firebird, basically. Yesterday I played around with the regular Trail and this got the farthest throws. I don't know. And they were hyzer flips, right? Every time. It's more understable than the numbers suggest by a mile. And if you do a nice hyzer flip, hyzer release, it's going to flip up and it's going to follow that S-curve, as you can see in the video clip. For my dad recently, I gave him my DX Mamba from 2 videos ago. That is in, it's DX plastic. It's 161 grams. He had some better results with that than I have. My throws with it tended to be less predictable unless it was perfectly calm weather. My dad got around his max distance with that disc, even though his throw, wobbles quite a bit when he is in the middle of the throw. But that Mamba was forgiving of that, and it still followed a straight path, a little bit of an S-curve, and worked really well for him. So yeah, in this process of trying to identify that more forgiving disc, you're going to find discs that either are too overstable or too understable. And there's just that middle ground where you get the full S-curve. So the last point I wanted to make was there's a possibility to work toward a progression in arm speed. The best way to throw faster is to decrease the weight. If you do the calculation, let's say that the disc is 20 grams lighter, you should be able to throw it about 3 miles per hour faster. So that's just part of this search. So you might be able to progress towards slightly faster arm speed, resulting in slightly farther distance. However, you're going to have to find the disc that's forgiving and does that full S-curve at that lower weight for you. Okay, so in summary, I've provided you with this graphic that sums this whole thing up. I also have written a newsletter article explaining all of this and showing these plots so that you can refer to them if you'd like. Remember, this is all just me trying to nail down some rules of thumb, some sequences of progression that help work towards understanding distance you can throw and what disc makes sense to use. So if you guys have any more suggestions of the sweet spot full S-curve disc, given the context of your arm speed, that would be absolutely amazing. Please share. But thanks again, and look forward to hearing your comments, and we'll see you next time.